On July 13, 1904, the British steamship Mohican left Philadelphia harbor bound for Brela, Romania, with a cargo of petroleum and merchandise. Just 2 weeks later, on their return trip, the crew of the Mohican experienced one of the strangest meteorological incidents ever recorded. When they were 200 miles from the Delaware breakwater, the lookout spotted a strange gray cloud in the southeast. As it grew closer, it became apparent that the gray mass was a dense fog, several hundred feet tall and a few hundred feet wide, with glowing spots both within and upon its surface. The mist quickly enveloped the steamship and brought it to its knees. The entire ship and all of the crew were illuminated by the glow of the fog, and everything looked like it was bathed in hellfire. The hair of the crew stood on end. The compass needle spun in circles so quickly that it looked like an electric fan. When the sailors attempted to move 75-pound chains that they could previously move with ease, they were so magnetically charged that it was as if they were riveted to the deck. After about 10 minutes, the muscles and joints of the men began to stiffen, and they were left unable to move their arms and legs. The men sat in silence for another 20 minutes, unable to move, unable to speak, before the fog finally passed over them and continued over the surface of the sea. When they arrived at port, Captain Urquhart and the crew shared their story. Each agreed that in all their years at sea, they had never experienced anything as frightening as that strange gray cloud. This is the mystery of the Magnetic Mohican. The Mohican was a 91.4-meter-long steel cargo steamship built in 1892 by Joseph L. Thompson and Sons in Sunderland, England. It operated for the Manhasset Line, a Liverpool-based cargo company, until 1898, when the Manhasset Line became the Magnetic Steamship Company. It continued with Magnetic until 1902, when the Magnetic Steamship Company became the North American Steamship Company. Throughout the company's iterations, the Mohican and the rest of the fleet were managed by T. Hogan and Sons, based in New York. In 1907, the Mohican was sold to Società Commerciale Italiana di Navigazione in Genoa, Italy, and was renamed the Clio. It continued to operate as a transatlantic cargo ship until 1917, when it ran aground near Aguilas, Spain, while carrying coal from Norfolk, Virginia to Piombino, Italy. There is one photo of the Mohican. It was taken on the deck in March 1906 when the Mohican delivered a load of petroleum at Nipe Bay, Cuba. So we know that this story has at least some basis in reality. As for Captain Urquhart and his personal character, we can't know for sure. There is one prominent steamship captain, Patrick Urquhart, who was so famous that he actually got his photo printed on a collector's card by W. Duke Sons & Company Tobacco, one of a set of 25 cards printed in 1887 to promote their honest long-cut smoking and chewing tobacco. The trouble is that his obituary, printed after his passing in 1914, said that he had been retired for 20 years. Based on his captain's registration with the insurance company Lloyd's of London, he would have been 84 at the time of his death, so it is unlikely that at 74 he would have come out of retirement to man the helm of the Mohican. Besides Captain Patrick, over 20 other Captain Urquharts were registered with Lloyd's of London. Urquhart was and is a relatively common Scottish surname. There's even an Urquhart Castle on Loch Ness of all places. None of the articles about the incident on the Mohican clarified which Captain Urquhart was our man, so we cannot be sure who was captaining the ship on that day. What we do know is that we are looking for a natural phenomenon that would create visible light, stand hair on end, wreak havoc with magnetic instruments, magnetize the deck with such force that chains could not be lifted, and freeze the muscles and nerves of the human body such that the sailors could not move. In short, we are looking for a changing electromagnetic field of substantial magnitude. Let's begin with the illumination aspect. Two odd luminous weather phenomena should be discussed: St. Elmo's fire and ball lightning. St. Elmo's fire is obviously a Brat Pack movie from 1985, but more importantly, it is an electrical phenomenon commonly witnessed on ship masts and other pointed objects during storms. An electrical charge builds up around the pointy thing in question, a corona discharge occurs, and the resulting plasma glows blue-violet and releases a hissing sound. It was named after Saint Erasmus of Formia, a famous 3rd century Christian martyr who is one of the 14 holy helpers and is a patron saint of sailors. Elmo is a corruption of Erasmus's Italian name Ermo, thus we have a phenomenon seemingly named after Sesame Street. St. Elmo's fire has been observed for millennia. It is even documented in several ancient Greek sources, though the name itself is obviously more recent nomenclature. Historically, it was considered a good omen, but I'm not really sure why. St. Elmo's fire can signify an impending lightning strike, so personally, I recommend getting out of Dodge if you witness it yourself. Forget the good omen stuff. It's definitely a sign you need to leave the area. Ball lightning is more mysterious and not as well documented by the scientific establishment. It's also associated with thunderstorms, but it typically occurs simultaneous to a lightning strike, not before. Some consider St. Elmo's fire to be a type of ball lightning, but that is highly contested. Like St. Elmo's fire, ball lightning produces a hissing sound, but unlike St. Elmo's fire, ball lightning is seen in various hues, including red, orange, yellow, white, blue, and violet, and it tends to give off a sulfuric smell. Ball lightning typically only lasts a few seconds, but can last over a minute, and the spheres can move and even pass through walls, creating a ghost light effect. The primary problem with both of these phenomena is that they are symptoms, not initiating forces, so they cannot explain the full range of experiences of the sailors on the Mohican. But even if we look at only the glow experienced by the sailors, neither St. Elmo's fire nor ball lightning can account for what happened. St. Elmo's fire occurs on the pointed ends of objects, not just in the middle of a cloud. And ball lightning is transient. It doesn't typically happen with so many concurrent balls that you could describe a cloud as looking like a leopard, as Captain Urquhart did. And both St. Elmo's fire and ball lightning are associated with thunderstorms, which this cloud was not. There is a relatively new discovery in physics that may provide more insight into our case. It was discovered and described by a self-trained scientist and tinkerer, John Hutchison. In his 20s, Hutchison found himself with a medical condition, a disability check from the Canadian government, and time on his hands. Thus, he began to salvage and rebuild electrical equipment for fun. In 1979, that came to a head when he used the equipment to accidentally levitate a piece of metal. From there, the race was on. Hutchison dove intensely into his work to discover just what he could do. He built complex electromagnetic fields using Tesla coils and electrostatic generators, and the results were staggering. All the while, he suffered roadblock after roadblock. Hostile governments looking to weaponize his technology, business partners looking to commodify his work, and neighbors who just wanted a break from the crazy guy next door. In 1983, Colonel John Alexander with U.S. Army Intelligence hired two contractors, Alex Pizarra and George Hathaway, to work with Hutchison under the pretense of helping him further his work. Their surveillance was compiled into a report by Los Alamos National Laboratory employees John Rink and Robert Freeman. Sometime before a series of FOIA requests in the year 2000, both the Los Alamos and Army copies of that report disappeared or were destroyed. We do, however, have some information from George Hathaway himself. George said that they had successfully used Hutchison's technology to create various effects. Most of the time, the complex electromagnetic fields just disturbed the structure of the objects or levitated them off the work surface, but other effects were also documented. Two incidents are of particular interest to our case. One time, the experiments created a pink iridescent glow, and another time the experiments caused a gray-colored cloud. Like St. Elmo's fire and ball lightning, the Hutchison effect is not an initiating force. It's just the symptom of an underlying cause. It does, however, shed a considerable light on the experiences of the Mohican, because it shows that all aspects described by Captain Urquhart were effects downstream of an unseen cause. Instead of looking for a meteorological explanation of how a cloud could become so intensely electromagnetically charged, we now see that the complex electromagnetic field could have caused all aspects of the Mohican's encounter, including the cloud itself. So, what in nature would cause those complex fields that John Hutchison created with his equipment? My first instinct is to look at geomagnetic storms, similar to the Carrington event of 1859, where there was a visible aurora over most of the planet. That can't square our circle, though. A geomagnetic storm caused by a solar flare would be too generalized to fit the description of our strange cloud. If that were the case, we would expect to see reports of disturbances to the telegraph system, as we did in November 1903, March 1905, and September 1909. We have no such reports, so we must look to a different source. Is there a natural explanation for an intense localized electromagnetic field? I couldn't find anything satisfactory in my library or on the internet. Instead, I want to pivot to a possible preternatural explanation. Aliens. Well, not aliens per se, but UFOs, specifically underwater UFOs. If you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that I am far more skeptical of aliens and UFOs than of any other preternatural phenomena. The only reason that I made the connection is the description of the crew's muscles tensing up. I had been reading a UFO interaction story that specifically mentioned how the person was frozen and unable to move until the craft exited the area, which got me thinking. One of the primary manifestations of the Hutchison effect is the ability to levitate objects, particularly metallic objects. Nikola Tesla similarly commented on the ability to reverse gravitational pull using electromagnetic fields. And one of the primary manifestations of UFO encounters is physical evidence of intense electromagnetic fields. This is even discussed in a NASA document from August 1979 entitled Field Resonance Propulsion Concept, where they say UFO propulsion systems appear to involve electromagnetic or hydromagnetic processes as evidenced by radiative effects on the environment such as burns, dehydration, stopping of automobile engines, TV and radio disruption, melting or alteration of ground and road surfaces, power disruptions, and static electricity effects. We also have historical testimony of UFOs in and around the world's oceans, seas, and large lakes. Ivan T. Sanderson compiled many of these reports into his book Invisible Residents: The Reality of Underwater UFOs. While none of the reports in his book directly mirror the phenomena experienced by the Mohican, there are reports dating from the same decade as the Mohican incident, meaning that there is a precedent for alien technology being in the Atlantic Ocean at the time of the Mohican. If there was a large craft under the surface of the water, and that craft was using its electromagnetic propulsion systems, all of the experiences of Captain Urquhart and his crew could be explained accordingly. Ultimately, I am undecided as to what caused the electromagnetic anomaly experienced by the Mohican in 1904. Still, there is a non-zero chance that the responsible phenomenon is also the most notorious unexplained phenomenon gracing our TVs today.